throwing dunks in your face. This is a team you don't want to miss. We are New York. We are the New York Knicks. Go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. Say go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. Say go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. You don't bust it, all you hear is a swish. Threes by Starks and dunks by Smith. And no rebounds, if that's the case, we put Oakley and Mace in your face. We draw charges and we set picks. We are New York. We are the New York Knicks. Say go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go. Say go New York, go New York, go. Go New York, go New York, go.
And good morning, everybody. The Knicks are not only back in the NBA Finals, but they have themselves a rematch from 27 years ago, the last time the Knicks were in the NBA Finals, and they're playing the San Antonio Spurs. And for so long, when I would hear the name San Antonio Spurs, the first thing that came to mind was the day that I graduated high school was the same day that the San Antonio Spurs clinched their first NBA championship on the floor of Madison Square Garden against the New York Knicks. The last time the Knicks were in the finals. I'll never forget that day, June 25th, 1999. A good day to start off with, a lot of pain to end that day with, and the New York Knicks now can't get payback as they would face the Spurs beginning in Game 1 of these NBA Finals. And in 1999, that was the first championship for the Spurs, and what is now 5 championships that they have. They won all 5 championships between 1999 and 2014. That was the first one for Tim Duncan. That was the first one for David Robinson. That was the first one for Greg Popovich. And Duncan and Popovich were together for all 5 championships. Tim Duncan was there for the first 2, 99 and 2003. And the New York Knicks now, folks, they are a team who, right now, they go into these NBA Finals on an 11-game win streak, and they have not played better in my lifetime, and they have surpassed my expectations so far in these playoffs. Now they have to get it done, and I thought the Knicks could get to this point, to the NBA Finals, but I never would have thought that they would do it the way they're doing it, running teams off the court, and 2 consecutive sweeps on their way to the NBA Finals. I thought that the Knicks, I said this last week, if they were going to win the NBA Finals, it was going to be blood and guts type of games. Every game, a lot of biting your nails, life and death situations to get to the finals and to win the finals. And so far, it's been anything but that, as the Knicks have the highest margin of victory, point total, and point average per game than any team in playoff history right now. And only a handful of teams have gone into the NBA Finals on an 11-game win streak, and all those teams were great teams. We're talking the Golden State Warriors of 2017, who ended up winning the championship. That might be the best team ever of all time, because that's a team that the year before had the best regular season record in NBA history. They were 73-9. They broke the Bulls, Michael Jordan's record that they set in the 95-96 season, when the Bulls won 72-10 in the 95-96 season. The 2016-17 Warriors, or the 2015-16 Warriors, were one game better, but then they lost to the greatest player of all time in the NBA Finals, LeBron James, in 7 games in the spring of 2016. So they were not able to lay claim to being the best team of all time. They would have had they won that championship with the best record ever, but they were beat. So that same team that summer added Kevin Durant, an all-time great. So that next season is when they they set their next season is when they went to the NBA Finals with an 11-game win streak, but and they did not have a better regular season record than the year before, pre-Durant, but they did with the pre-Durant the second time, what they did not do, because we know the pre-Durant Warriors in 2014-2015 won the championship. Then the next year, that record-breaking team lost the championship to LeBron. Then the next year, they added Kevin Durant. Even though they didn't go 73-9, they won the championship, which the year before without KD they did not do. But we know, all right, just for the record, the Warriors won one without KD twice, before he got there and after. But my point is that 2017 Warriors team, even though they did not have a better record than the year before, they had KD they did not have the year before, and that 2017 Warriors team, I would say probably is the best basketball team I've ever seen, okay? And these Knicks have won 11 straight games going into the finals like that team has, and they have a larger margin of victory by like over 100 points than that Warriors team had. Unbelievable. And also other teams that have gone into the finals on 11-game win streak, the 89 Lakers are another one, all right? And they ended up losing in the finals to the Pistons. And the 89 Lakers were going for a three-peat, and they had beat the Pistons in the finals the year before in 88. And so 89 ended up losing in the finals. They had an injury. I believe they might have got hurt early in that series or something. But the Pistons beat them. And then the Shaq and Kobe, I believe the 2001 Lakers, when they ran through everybody, they swept Duncan and the Spurs, and they ended up playing the New Jersey Nets, the 2002 Lakers team. They ended up playing the New Jersey Nets, and they swept them. So, no, excuse me. The 2000, hold on, folks. 2001 Lakers, 2001 Lakers are the ones who, and they played Philadelphia, actually, and they won 11 straight going to the finals. And they're the ones that they swept Duncan and Robinson in 01. Yeah, so about 3 teams before the Knicks have gone to the finals with 11 straight wins, and these Knicks do that. And yeah, just incredible how they're playing. Now San Antonio, they knocked off the reigning NBA champion Oklahoma City Thunder last night, and the Thunder are a team who a lot of people were scared of the Thunder since last year. I felt like the Knicks had a good chance of beating the Thunder in the finals last year, but the Knicks, of course, did not make it, got beat in the conference finals to Indiana. And then Indiana took the Thunder to 7 games last year. Their best player, Tyrese Halliburton, got hurt early in Game 7 towards Achilles. Oklahoma City won. And then to begin this year, Oklahoma City was playing so well that a lot of people thought they were going to set the all-time regular season record. They thought they were going to surpass the 2015-16 Warriors team that I just mentioned that went 73-9. A lot of folks thought the Thunder were going to break that record, okay? They started off so well this year, but then they got upended, and really their comeuppance, all right, from the time when the season started, and a lot of folks thought, oh, they may not even lose more games than the 2015-16 Warriors. From that point to when they first got their comeuppance and their rude awakening was in the NBA Cup when the San Antonio Spurs beat them. And the Spurs might have even beat them 1 game before the Cup, but in the semifinal of the NBA Cup, the Spurs beat them. And that was a statement win. And as much as some folks, because the NBA Cup is new, this was only the 3rd year, as much as some folks look at the NBA Cup, it's stupid or whatever, even though this year a lot of folks in New York definitely got in it because the Knicks got to the NBA Cup and won it. But so as much as people want to say, oh, the NBA Cup, whatever, don't mean much, this year you have the NBA Cup finalist and the NBA championship, okay? How sweet is that, okay? And the Knicks, we know, in mid-December, in the NBA Cup, they knocked off the Spurs. And that game, I watched that game at a bar here in Harlem, and it was packed, and it felt like a big game. It felt like a big game watching that with a bunch of other Knicks fans, and felt like a playoff game. Felt like a big game. Knicks were down double digits. They came back, and they put the clamps on Wemby and company, and they got the win. They got the NBA Cup. Everybody was happy, and of course, the Knicks chose not to raise the NBA Cup banner, which was the right thing to do because the Knicks had not won a championship, a real championship, since 1973. That's what it's about. That's what everybody wants to see, the real championship. And now, here we are in the NBA Finals, and the New York Knicks are facing the same team they faced for that NBA Cup. 8 foot man, Victor Wembanyama, not really 8 feet. He's about 5 inches from 8 feet, all right? And he can do everything. Unguardable. Victor Wembanyama is everything they said he was going to be before he got into the league. He is. Just the way LeBron was, okay? Just the way some of the all-time greats, #1 picks were. This guy is the real deal. Give him credit because we've seen a lot of other guys get hyped up, #1 pick, and not being anywhere close to what they said that player was going to be. Well, Wemby, 3 years into his NBA career, the Frenchman is in the NBA Finals, led his team to the Finals. It's not just him, though. He's got a crew. They got a really talented team, a lot of young draft picks. But the New York Knicks, folks, winning that cup, NBA Cup, mid-season tournament in December. The Knicks are not, the Knicks this year, all right, only 3 years, but the Knicks this year became the first team to win the NBA Cup to win a playoff series, okay? Because the 2 previous NBA Cup winners, the first one was, of course, who do you think, when there's something new and big in the NBA statement tournament, who do you think would be the first to win the NBA Cup? The GOAT, the best of all time, LeBron. LeBron and the Lakers won the first NBA Cup, all right? Just a Christian and everything. But they were beaten in the first round that year against the Denver Nuggets, who were the reigning NBA champions at that time, who had beat them in the conference finals the previous year. Then, the next season, which was last season, Giannis and Dame Lillard won the NBA Cup. And they got beaten in the first round last year against Tyrese Halliburton and Indiana. And now this year, the Knicks won it, and the Knicks get to the finals, okay? So, the Knicks, hey, how great would it be? How sweet would it be, folks, if the Knicks now, after winning the NBA Cup, beating the Spurs in the NBA Cup, go and win the NBA championship over the San Antonio Spurs, the same team that just beat in the NBA Cup a few months ago, and the team that beat them in the 9-9 finals, okay? And if the Knicks win the NBA Finals here over the Spurs next year, let's raise 2 banners. The NBA Cup banner from this year and the NBA Finals banner from this year. All right, so let's get it done. Let's get it done. Now, the Knicks and Spurs play 3 times this season. The first time I mentioned the NBA Cup championship. Again, felt like a big game watching that with other Knicks fans at a bar. Place was rocking. And then the Knicks played the Spurs about 14, 15, 16 days later on New Year's Eve in San Antonio. And that was the game where, after beating the Spurs in the NBA Cup, and the Spurs are a team who, after they beat the Thunder in the NBA Cup semifinal, they beat them again right after that. So they were beating the defending champions regularly. So from a Knicks perspective, after beating the Spurs in the Cup, you play them again 2 weeks later. New Year's Eve, always a festive evening. You want to beat them again, make a statement again. Okay, we beat y'all again. So 2 weeks later on New Year's Eve, the Knicks are spanking them again, spanking them. And actually, in the NBA Cup game, the Knicks were down by double digits, came back and won the game. Now, after beating them in the NBA Cup 2 weeks later, the Knicks are smacking them on San Antonio's home court. Second half, third quarter, Knicks up by 20 plus. And then a guy from New York who played his high school ball in New York, from New York, obviously. He's a twin that has his twin brother, identical twin brother, who's in the NBA as well. Justin Champagnie went to St. John's. He got on fire, made a number of threes. He might have made about 10 threes that game, all right? He went off, and the Spurs ended up coming all the way back to give the Knicks a brutal New Year's Eve loss. Okay, that was brutal. And that loss sent the Knicks on a tailspin, okay? The Knicks would go back home, and they would lose on back-to-back nights to the Atlanta Hawks and the Philadelphia 76ers, two teams who at the time looked at them like, oh, they're athletic, they're quick, they're fast backcourt, good, long, fast defenders. They get the Knicks problems. Well, we know, come playoff time, the Knicks mop the floor with both of them, Atlanta and Philadelphia, okay? And that's the level the Knicks are playing at right now. But that San Antonio loss on New Year's Eve, that collapse against them, the Knicks ended up going on a serious tailspin, all right? That was the beginning of them losing 9 of 11 games, okay? And MLK Day, January 17th or 19th, right? It was a Monday, MLK Day, the annual MLK Day game at Madison Square Garden. Knicks got run off the court against the Dallas Mavericks, who had nobody playing. Everybody was hurt. Kyrie was hurt all year. Anthony Davis was still with them at that time. He was hurt, not playing. The NBA Rookie of the Year, Cooper Kupp, was hurt, okay? Nobody playing. Knicks in a tailspin, all right? Detroit Pistons smacking them around, okay? All right? And they were down by 30 before halftime on MLK Day against a depleted, injury-riddled Dallas Mavericks team, okay? Yikes. And there were calls for the head coach's job, Mike Brown. And the next game, Knicks were facing the Brooklyn Nets, the lowly Brooklyn Nets. And a couple weeks before that, matter of fact, the Knicks played the Detroit Pistons on a Monday, January 5th, right? Right after they lost their 2 home games to Atlanta and Philadelphia. And then that day, January 5th, a Monday, Knicks owner James Dolan goes on the radio and he says that, okay, yeah, we're not raising the NBA Cup banner because it's about winning an NBA championship, And he said, yeah, I expect them to win the championship. You know what I'm saying? And so that night, the Knicks played the Detroit Pistons, and the Pistons beat them by dang near 40 in Detroit, all right? It was ugly, all right? So at the Knicks going into the game after MLK Day, when the Dallas Mavericks beat them by 30 on their home court, okay? They now lost 9 of 11. And going to the Brooklyn Nets game, all right? Better not lose that game at home to the lowly Brooklyn Nets. There were rumors if the Knicks lost that game, Mike Brown could be gone, all right? And there have been, that was definitely a moment where Mike Brown looked like he was in some trouble. No doubt about it. And the Knicks, they came against Brooklyn. And what did they do, folks? They won by their largest margin of victory ever in franchise history. They won by 54 points. And the Knicks, from that point, went on, I think, about like a 8-game winning streak. And they turned things around. And then they started to have a little bit of struggle again, but they turned things around. But excuse me, they still were a team who could not beat Detroit, who were the #1 team in the East this year in the regular season. And then they played Cleveland. All right, the first 2 games after the All-Star break, right? The first game after the All-Star break, they played Detroit, got smoked. And then shortly after that, they played Cleveland on the road and got smoked. James Harden had just got there. The Pistons, the last time they played them, the first game after the All-Star break, it was at Madison Square Garden. The Knicks still got smoked. And, but, excuse me. But, so that New Year's Eve Spurs loss really triggered some bad play by them, but they got it together. Then they played the Spurs again on March 1st, a 1 o'clock Sunday game. And the Spurs had played the Brooklyn Nets in Brooklyn on a Thursday night. So they had been in New York since a Thursday night off, since Thursday night beating the Nets, and then have a 1 o'clock Sunday game at the Garden against the Knicks. And going into that, I knew that the Spurs were not going to win that game because here's the young team, okay? Not very many of these guys married or have families yet. And they're young stars, rich, with a handful of days to have fun in New York City. And you got a 1 o'clock game on Sunday. These players never play 1 o'clock games. They play at night, all right? NBA players, pro athletes, the creatures of habit, they're used to playing at night. Definitely not 1 o'clock in the afternoon, okay? All right, so you got Friday night, Thursday night. I mean, the weekend pops off Thursday night. Then you got Friday night, Saturday night in New York City. So I knew 1 o'clock Sunday game, they were not going to be prepared to play a basketball game. Knicks blew them out. Big win. And I said what I just said after the game. A lot of Knicks fans weren't trying to hear that at all from me. But I was like, you know what? I'm obviously happy the Knicks won, but, I wouldn't put too much stock into this because Spurs weren't ready to play a game. But, so those were the 3 times Knicks and Spurs played, and Knicks won 2 of 3. They should have won all 3. And now they meet the Spurs for the NBA championship. All right, the real trophy. But how sweet would it be to win both the NBA Cup and the NBA Finals? That would be sweet, all right? Cement your dominance over the whole season. What? Top this, okay? With how they're playing. Listen, if the Knicks have the NBA Finals, all right, performance, the way they've had through these first 3 rounds, where they continue to roll and smoke teams, all right, they could go down as one of the best teams of all time in NBA history, okay? That's how they're playing right now. Let's get it done, okay? And, hey, I got to give this team credit because, as I said, we've never seen them play this well ever, this team or any other Knicks team, okay? And even people who saw the 70s Knicks championships, the 2 championships, okay? Even some of them are willing to say that, okay, if the Knicks get it done, win 4 more games here, folks, in these NBA Finals, there are folks who I know who watched the 2 Knicks 70s teams who are prepared to say that this Knicks team is the best one of all time, okay, in franchise history, if they can finish it off and win 4 more. That's how well they're playing right now, okay? And again, this is a team who did not play this way in the regular season, okay? This is why what we're seeing right now is just so stunning and just unbelievable. It feels like storybook stuff. And there have been times over the course of sports history where you see certain teams in whatever sport it is, all right, and they are just rolling and they just have it. They just have it. It just seems like everything is just going their way, and it seems magical. The Knicks right now, through 3 series, this is the kind of run it's been. And never thought they would win this dominating, okay? All right? I didn't think, on paper, they were this much dominant than anybody else. The teams they beat the way they beaten, okay? Again, thought they could get here, but the way they're doing it, smashing them, running them off the court, I mean, look, you sitting down now, last couple of series, you sat down for these games, and, I mean, you know they're going to win. Confidently going to win. Even when they get down, it's like, okay, no sweat. No sweat. It's only a matter of time until that wave hits, and then the other team is done. Okay, the Knicks start rolling. Other team can't do nothing about it. All right? Excuse me. And one important thing to know here is that really, you hope that the Knicks could get it done here because there will be so much praise to go around. But we got to start with the general manager, Leon Rose, because, and I say, on paper, and some people look at the Knicks team like, oh, I've heard people say all year that the Knicks have so much talent, they have more talent than all these clubs in the East, right? And I was saying, I always felt like, okay, y'all kind of overrating the talent of the Knicks a little bit, you know what I'm saying? But right now, the way they're playing right now, I mean, they're playing, yes, like an all-time great team. And I got to give them their due because, look, they had guys. The biggest concern always was Jalen Brunson is great. Like, I've seen him do so much over these 4 years. I say, you know what? Like, I would not change, trade, take anybody over Jalen Brunson, right? But it was always, he needs more help. He needs more help. His number 2, 3, and 4 guys, they're not consistent enough for the Knicks, right? To do what we want them to do. That was always the biggest issue I had. And now, okay, I always said, if the number 2 and Karl Anthony Towns plays consistent the way he is capable of playing, and if they start every game, then the Knicks can do it. But Karl Anthony Towns was so up and down this season, and sometimes he took more criticism than what I thought was fair, starting with last year's playoffs. But he was the guy who a lot of Knicks fans were ready to run out of town in January, okay, and most of February, all right? And even leading up to the playoffs, about 2 weeks before the playoffs, it was like, yo, why is Karl Anthony Towns only taking 4, 5 shots in the whole game? The Knicks need him to be a big presence to win a championship, and it seemed like there was a disconnect, like he was lost in the offense, like he was not happy, like they were not even looking for him, like what's going on? So when it was like that, you were like, look, the Knicks can't win a championship like this, okay? And then OG Anunoby, somebody who, I love OG, all right? As soon as OG came the first year, 2 seasons ago, the Knicks traded for him. His first game was January 1st, 2024. And the Knicks, from that day, that whole month of January, went 15-2, okay? and they were smoking teams. And they hardly lost that first year OG got into the lineup. But we know OG got a hamstring injury in the playoffs that year, second round, and the Knicks ended up losing that second round series to Indiana, losing Game 7 at home. Knicks had other injuries that year that derailed them, not just OG. Their second All-Star, Julius Randle, before Towns got there, he got hurt in late January, never returned. Knicks still were a really good team, almost got to the conference finals even without their second best All-Star, but then so many other guys started to get hurt, and OG was one of them. And the Knicks re-signed him after that season. He was a free agent. Knicks gave him the bag, okay? He ended up getting, the biggest contract in Knicks history at the time. And for a guy that had never made an All-Star team, still had never made an All-Star team, but you saw his impact on winning. Plus, the Knicks rival, who they had just beaten in the playoffs that year, Philadelphia, wanted him, and you did not want to give Philadelphia him, okay? So that was another thing that OG had, another thing that he had in his back pocket, okay? And the Knicks gave him that big contract. But OG is somebody who, when he's at his best, he's great. And people say, oh, he's the next Kawhi Leonard or he's Kawhi Leonard 2.0. And I'm just like, Kawhi Leonard, when he's playing, all right, is consistently great every game. OG does not play consistently great every game, okay? Some games he does, okay? And we're talking about regular season OG. So that was part of the issue, okay? I'm like, look, he's not consistent enough to be, all right, number 3 guy when you got your number 2 guy who is up and down, okay? So I was like, look, you need your number 2 to be better because your number 3 is not consistent enough. And your number 4, Mikal Bridges, he is somebody who has had consistency problems as well, right? So that was always the concern. I'm somebody who, if you know me, I wanted them to trade for Giannis at the deadline, okay? But the problem was the Knicks started playing after they had their 9 losses in 11 games. Once they beat Brooklyn by 54, they went on a win streak again, started playing well again. So they were playing too well to make a big move like that at the deadline and trade so many other players who were key players at that point because they were playing so well. So that got put on hold, and you got the rest of the season, y'all. You had the rest of the season to get it done, all right? And we'll revisit this in the summertime, okay? And now look, now, like I said, I admit I wanted Giannis, but I don't even want to hear about Giannis right now, obviously. And these Knicks, all right, the way they're playing way better than I thought they could play. Like I said, I thought they could get to the finals. I thought they could win the championship. But I did not think they would do it. Rolling through everybody, 11 straight wins, 2 consecutive sweeps, beating teams by 50, 40, 30 points. Again, I said earlier these playoffs. I said when these playoffs first started in the first round, I said, look, why can't the Knicks why can't the Knicks blow some teams out in the playoffs? Why? Why can't they get blowout wins? They'll be, you know what? Traditionally, when the Knicks are good, yeah, they'll beat you in the playoffs. They'll get playoff wins, even though they haven't had a championship since 1973. All right, they'll beat you, but it's always a knock 'em out, drag 'em out, bloods and guts kind of game where you're biting your nails on the edge of your seat to the end. But hey, after the Knicks fell down 2-1 in their first round series, not only have they not lost again, all right, not lost a game since then, that was a long time ago now, but well over a month ago, about 40 plus days ago, was the last time the Knicks lost. And since that day, folks, all right, right after the Knicks lost Game 3, and I threw my phone at the end of the game, the Knicks lost Game 2 and Game 3, both by 1 point, okay? They became the first team in NBA history to lose 2 straight playoff games by 1 point, all right? And they had the ball at the end with a chance to win both games, okay? And they didn't get it done. The second time, game 3, I threw my phone at the end of the game, at the buzzer, threw my phone. So upset, almost broke it. Glad I did not. And at that time, I was very down on the team. I did not think they were going to win the series. Maybe it was me trying to have a reverse jinx, because a lot of times I'll jinx myself. Sometimes you get so confident, and you end up jinxing yourself. So I said, oh, they're done, you know? Maybe kind of trying to give a little psych to the basketball guys out there, you know what I'm saying? And maybe reverse jinx things. I don't know. But with the way they have been playing so up and down this year, all right, not being the best team in the regular season, in a season that began with the Knicks having expectations to be where they are now to the championship, all right? But they were not playing like the best team in the East all regular season long. And, all right, coming into the playoffs, so many people would say, hey, what do you think about the Knicks' chances in the playoffs? And you would say, hey, I'm hopeful, okay? Yes, I believe they can get to the championship round and win it. All right, I'm more hopeful than confident, because they haven't been as good as you would have liked to see them be during the regular season. Well, hey, and so through 3 games of the first round, they were playing the same way they had played all regular season long. Well, since that point, folks, the Knicks had not only played the best that they played all season, all right, and they played the way we've never seen these Knicks play this season, but they've played the best that many of us have ever seen them play, okay? That's how they made some adjustments. Coach Mike Brown, shout out to him, give him credit, all right? He has been phenomenal as we hit 12 o'clock here at WACR Sports, 90.3 FM, from the home of the last New York City collegiate basketball champion, all right? We thought we might get another one this year, but St. John's fell short. St. John's head coach, Rick Pitino, former Knicks head coach. And shout out to Rick Pitino, because his 88-89 Knicks had, I believe, the best start at home in franchise history. They even had a better home record than these Knicks did. A really good team who got upset in the playoffs by the Bulls, and they had a higher seed than the Bulls that year, I believe. And I didn't even realize that. And I looked at it, all right, a couple of years ago, and saw that the 89 Knicks had a higher seed than the Bulls in the playoffs, and got beat. Got upset. The Jordan Elo game, where Jordan made the shot against Elo in the playoffs in Game 5. The next round, they played the Knicks. Knicks had home court, and they beat the Knicks. Well, Rick Pitino, that team was really good in the regular season. I think they might have been number 2 seed, and the Bulls were a lower seed, and knocked the Knicks off. But I think the Bulls might have been the 6th seed, and Knicks might have been the 2 seed. Cleveland was the 3 seed, I think. Yeah, but so yeah, Rick Pitino, shout out to him, and St. John's, I mentioned them. All right, that's where Rick Pitino was coaching now. The Spurs have a St. John's former ball player, Justin Champagnie, I mentioned earlier, a New Yorker, and he was the biggest reason why the Knicks on New Year's Eve blew a 20-plus third-quarter lead in San Antonio, okay? And so now, folks, 27 years in the making, Knicks back in the finals, okay? And they're facing a team who beat them, all right? I told y'all, the day I graduated high school, June 25th, 1999, the Spurs clinched the finals, beating the Knicks, clinched the championship at the Garden. I had to watch on TV that night after I graduated during the day and watch that. So much pain. On Friday night, And 10 years later, on June 25th, Michael Jackson passed away. Yeah, on June 25th, 2009. That evening, Steph Curry was drafted into the NBA. Yep. And the Knicks, I wanted them to draft because Steph Curry got drafted the pick before the Knicks. And so the Knicks, I wanted them to select at that point Brandon Jennings. They did not. They took Jordan Hill, who turned out to be a bust. Sorry, but he did. Jordan Hill out of Arizona. And that first season, the first week of the season in 2009, the Brandon Jennings played against Steph Curry. All right, Brandon Jennings got drafted by Milwaukee. Steph Curry got drafted by Golden State. And Brandon Jennings, who, again, I wanted the Knicks to draft, but they did not. Steph Curry got picked a pick ahead of the Knicks pick. And even if the Knicks had a chance to pick Steph Curry, at that time I wanted Brandon Jennings. And the Knicks end up taking, all right, again, neither. But the first week of that year, the Bucks played the Warriors, Jennings versus Steph Curry, and Jennings had 55 points against Steph Curry in their rookie years. And I had a friend, Sharu Robinson, who has since passed. He passed in 2020. So shout out to Sharu Robinson. Him and I would argue. He was a Steph Curry guy. I was like, hey, Brandon Jennings is going to be better than Steph Curry. And we argued about that for the first 2 years. Because Steph Curry did not come out gangbusters early. So I'll always say it. And so when Jennings had 55 against Steph, I said, look, see, I told you. I ended up being so wrong. But, yeah, I remember that first year when Brandon Jennings came to play the Knicks at the Garden. I did a story about that, interviewed him before the game, interviewed Jordan Hill before the game, interviewed and I called the story the young Buck versus Nate Robinson, because Nate Robinson, who I was a big fan of for a long time, was one of my top 5 all-time favorite Knicks. I got to reassess that now after, this latest 4 or 5 Knicks era here with Brunson, Orlando, and Tibbs in them. But Nate never got a chance to start, and the head coach at that time, Mike D'Antoni, was finally giving Nate a chance to start some games, and that was his first game starting that night against the Bucks and Brandon Jennings, who I wanted the Knicks to draft in that past year's draft. And I remember doing the story. Young Buck versus Nate Robinson at Madison Square Garden, okay? And, yeah, so that's a story that I remember doing. So many Knicks stories that I've done over the years, really 20 years of Knicks coverage, covering them, so many locker room stories and all that. But right now, folks, we are going to transition to the phone, and we have as good of a sports historian as I know on the line right now, my friend Dave German. Dave, welcome.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. So yeah, man. So 27 years since the Knicks were last in the NBA Finals, and you probably heard me say this, but when the Knicks were last in, obviously they played the Spurs, and the night the Knicks lost the Finals and the Spurs clinched the championship, I graduated from high school that same day. So a lot of good memories and bad memories from that day, June 25th, 1999. But Dave, what do you think about this NBA Finals rematch from 27 years later?
Well, I tell you, I had first thought that Oklahoma City would be the much more difficult team for the Knicks to face in the NBA Finals, based on their experience and just the way they played in the regular season. But I tell you, seeing San Antonio last night, I was very impressed. That team is fearless. Maybe it's because they're so young, they don't know any better, but they played fearless basketball in a very hostile environment in Oklahoma City last night, and really impressed me how they held on there at the end, had just a lot of confidence and so forth. And, where I thought Oklahoma City would have been the more tougher opponent, I'm seeing how San Antonio could give the Knicks trouble. I still think the Knicks are going to win, but they're going to come in with some confidence based off of winning that Game 7 in a very hostile environment.
Yes, no doubt about it. And the Spurs, yeah, they are a young team, a very talented team. And the Thunder had some key injuries, notably to their second best player, Jalen Williams. And yeah, the San Antonio Spurs, they are a team who really, before the 99 championship, did not have a whole lot of success in the NBA. They were original ABA team. They were in the ABA, right, Dave?
Yeah, they were the first ABA team to win an NBA championship. They were one of the 4 teams in 1976 when the leagues merged that came over from the ABA.
Yes. So, what do you think about this franchise? I mean, they seem like they've had a lot of luck here with getting the 3 number 1 overall picks over the years with Robinson, Duncan, and now Wemby, and then they get Popovich and all that. Just yeah, somebody who you saw them before their NBA when they were in the ABA and all that. So you've really seen the progression of this franchise. So when I say San Antonio Spurs to you, what comes to your mind?
Well, first off, I believe they were the Dallas Chaparrals. I think that's where they started in the ABA. The ABA had lots of movement of teams during their 9 years. And then they moved down to San Antonio. And San Antonio embraced them from the get-go. There's something to be said about these NBA teams where they're the only game in town, whether it's Oklahoma City, whether it's San Antonio, whether it's Portland. The fans are rabid for them. And the Spurs, one of those teams, are quickly embraced by the city. Their key marquee player during their formative years was the Iceman, George Gervin. He was their one superstar they had. But then, obviously, in the late 90s, and you talk about tanking, they were doing tanking in the 90s to get Robinson and particularly to get Duncan. And obviously, those two, turned things around tremendously for them.
Yes, no question about it. And the Knicks right now, we talked last week about how well they were playing, and and how someone like myself who did not see the 2 championship teams in the 70s my whole life, I've been hearing about how well they played as a team and how well they passed and how well they moved the ball. That's something that has been a staple of what you hear about that team. Now, this Knicks team here, they are playing really well right here. Do they remind you just in terms of just their run of just some, when we're looking at, basketball, or even outside of basketball, when you think about some of the special championship runs that we've seen, and the Knicks have 4 more wins to go, but what are some of the all-time runs, great teams, great dominance that you've seen over your time watching sports?
Well, to answer your first question, they very much remind me of those championship teams. Unselfish play, great defense, great bench play. The guys coming off the bench for this Knicks team very much remind me of the Knicks had these 3 guys called the Minutemen, Cazzie Russell, Dave Stallworth, and Mike Reard, who came off the bench and kind of gave them an instant offense off the bench. And the same thing happens with Shamet and those guys as well, too. So it's very, very strikingly similar to those teams, which bodes very, very well. I will say this, though. Those great 70 and 73 teams, they never won 11 games in a row and blew out their competition the way this Knicks team is. So this team is going to be more special than even the 70 and 73 teams, the way they are playing. And that's saying a lot because particularly the 70 team is very beloved by New York sports fans. But this team is really etching themselves. If they can win the NBA championship, not only is it a great champion, but a great all-time champion in all of New York sports. That's how special this New York Knicks run is. You talk about teams are going on great runs, and you were talking a little bit before about on the show. The 1983 Philadelphia 76ers were an incredibly dominant team. They went through, I believe in those days it was just 3 rounds, but they just dominated everyone. They only lost 1 game. I think it was in the Eastern Conference Finals, but they were really challenged there. And then they beat the Lakers, who were the defending champions, 4 straight. and they won pretty handily. I was at Game 3 of the Forum that year, where the Sixers did that 4-game streak. And that team, I always think about dominant teams, and that team really stands out. And then, of course, during the Bill Russell era, with that great run they had, the 11 championships, 13 years, there was some just incredibly dominant teams during that time frame as well.
And the Knicks, what do you think? You see all of the excitement. You see a lot of the fans, how they're acting and all that outside the Garden and all this. Knicks have not won, all right, in so long, so we get that. But what do you think the New York Knicks means to New York City and everybody?
No question, they are, you talk about the city itself, not the New York metropolitan area, but there's something about the Knicks and the city that transcends all the other sports teams. When the Knicks do well, there's a pulse, there's an excitement in the city that you really feel. And this team is certainly given that kind of spirit to New York, so it's really, really special.
How do you now? When you see this series and you see Wembanyama, he's such a talent, and you definitely look at it like the Spurs are going to be in position to win championships for a long time, and Wembanyama and his teammates are only going to get better. They're so young, and it definitely seems like an opportunity the Knicks cannot let pass, because it's going to get only harder going forward over the years. We know that the Knicks, as well as they're playing right now, they're never going to play better than this, okay? Never. So how do you see, this series matching up, with the, Wembanyama, a matchup problem for anybody, and then you have the Spurs. They have 3 outstanding guards, 2 of them young. Castle, just his second year, won a championship in college at UConn. And then you have Dylan Harper, who a freshman coming off the bench, the son of Ron Harper, who won several championships as a role player with the Bulls and then the LA Lakers. And then you have De'Aaron Fox, who Knicks head coach Mike Brown coached in Sacramento. And, they had success together, and he is an all-star very quick. So 3 dynamic guards. And then you have a New York kid who went to St. John's, Justin Champagnie, who on New Year's Eve hit about 10 threes against the Knicks and really put himself on the map and really put the Knicks into a tailspin for a month at the time. And, even, Vassell off the bench and Keldon Johnson. So the Knicks, they had their guys, OG, Bridges, everybody playing at the top of their game, Town, Brunson, the bench. So how do you size this matchup up?
And you've got former Tar Heel Harrison Barnes, who hasn't really played much, got in last night, but
yes,
he's also a guy who, certainly in the past, when he played for the Warriors,
a champion,
to be an explosive player. So it's kind of good to have kind of that experience there. The difference to me, Samori, is that the Spurs are kind of 1 year ahead of where they should be. And this is going to be a great experience in playing in the NBA Finals. But the Knicks are now poised. They've had 2 postseasons leading into this season where they were, really, played well, but just fell a little bit short. But that experience, I think, is going to now get them over the hump in this round versus the Spurs, as talented as they are. And there's a lot of talent. You just looked at them. And you said before, rightly on the show, lots of top 3 picks on the team. But they don't have the experience that the Knicks have at this level, particularly this Knicks team that's battled and been battle-tested 2 previous seasons, postseasons, and now with the run they're on, I think that is the difference here between the Knicks and the Spurs.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot real quick, being the great historian that you are. Now I'm thinking about NBA Finals history, and so I'm going to say, what are, on the top of your head, the top 5 NBA Finals that you remember witnessing?
Well, the 1970, Knicks, anyone who's a New York basketball fan, that, no matter if the Knicks, won 5 chips in a row, that will always be special. Why? Just that team was so beloved in New York, and it was the first championship. So that one, really, really stands out. But other ones that stand out to me, in 1967, The Celtics, who won all those championships in a row, finally their streak was stopped when the Sixers won with Wilt Chamberlain, and that team went 68-13, which was at that time by far the greatest record of all time, and they dominated in the postseason and stopped the Celtics streak of, I think it was 9 in a row. That team was an unbelievable team, that 67 team. One that stands, I'm not going to say these were two of the greatest teams, but in 1977, the Sixers, Dr. J's first year there in Philadelphia, were playing Bill Walton and the Portland Trail Blazers. And the Sixers, I think, were very, very heavy favorites in that. And they won the first two games, but they were going to cakewalk through that NBA Finals. And wouldn't you know it, Portland won the next four to win their own NBA championship in 1977. That was very, very memorable. Walton, of course, got hurt, in the next ensuing season. Was never the player they expected because of the foot issues that he faced. 1980 stands out because of the Lakers and the Sixers, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar got hurt in that NBA Finals. And in the deciding sixth game, Magic Johnson, who was a rookie at that time, who had played point guard that year, was forced to play center, and he played unbelievably well. And I can't remember how many points he scored, but he had one of those games for the ages. And the Lakers won their second NBA championship in 1980, and was on the heels of that great performance of Magic Johnson. So that one really stands out. And then I know Knicks fans don't want to hear this, but Jordan's first championship in 1991, the first of his six. They had come so close. I always have this theory: you have to have tough defeat before you can get over the hump to win a championship. And the Bulls certainly had that, losing twice to the bad boy Pistons, 89 and 90, and then they finally got over the hump, beat them in 91 in the playoffs, and they played the Lakers with Magic and all those guys. Kareem had retired, but they still had a very, very good team. And the Lakers won the first game. Remember, Tar Heel Sam Perkins hitting a key basket at the end to seal the victory for the Lakers, and then the Bulls swept the next four in a row, and Jordan won his first championship. So I can go on with others, but just off the top of my head, those five really stand out.
Yes, and I remember watching that last one there, 1990, and you mentioned in game one that Sam Perkins made the shot, and the Lakers won that game before the Bulls won right the four in a row. And I mentioned a couple of things. So I was talking earlier about 1989 Knicks, and something that I didn't even realize until I really looked at it about a year or two ago was the Knicks that year were number 2 seed, I believe, in the Eastern Conference. And I mentioned how that Knicks team, I believe they had the best home record to start the season, coached by Rick Pitino, and that was the year when Jordan and the Bulls, that was a Craig Elo shot game at the buzzer, game 5, where the Bulls beat the Cavaliers. And I didn't realize this until, I was looking at some research about a year or two ago, and the Bulls that year, I believe, were actually number 6 seed, and the Knicks were number 2 seed, I think it was. In the second round, the Knicks, as the higher seed, they lost to the Bulls, who were number 6 seed, which I didn't even realize that the Knicks were number 2 seed that year. Do you remember much about that series a long time ago?
I do. I absolutely remember that. So first off, the Knicks ended a 16-year drought of going 16 years without a banner. They had, last time they hung a banner was the 73 Eastern Conference Championship, and then they won the division in 89. That was a big deal. They were division champions in 89. And that series was a war. It was brutal, a lot of tight games, very, very hard fought. Bill Cartwright, ex-Knick, was the center on the Bulls at that time. And it was really, really close games, very, very tough battles. And the Bulls prevailed. And the atmosphere of both places, the Guard was electric. The Bulls in Chicago Stadium, was electric. But the Bulls just, pulled it out. But I don't think either were going to beat that Piston team. That Piston team, who went on to sweep the Lakers in Kareem's last year, 4 straight, was just really, Isaiah and Lambier and those guys, they were destined to win that season.
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that the Lakers going into those finals, like the Knicks, had won 11 straight games, and the Pistons swept them. So I think Magic got hurt in that series. Hurt his hamstring, did he?
Possibly, yeah. Don't recall, but yeah, maybe, yeah.
Got you. Okay, now, also, you mentioned the 1967 finals where the Philadelphia 76ers beat the San Francisco Golden State Warriors, right? Now,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
now that Sixers team with Wilt Chamberlain, they beat the Celtics in the playoffs. I think that might have been the only time that Wilt beat Russell in the playoffs. Is that correct?
It was, yep. And he should have done it the next year. They had a 3-1 lead in the 68 Eastern Conference Finals, and they blew it. And the Celtics won Game 7, I think by 2 points in Philadelphia. They should have done it a second year in a row, but didn't. But it was the only time he beat Bill Russell. 68, as I just mentioned, lost the 3-1 lead, and then he went to the Lakers after that. And, of course, his first year in Los Angeles loses again to Bill Russell in Bill Russell's final game as coach in Game 7 at the Forum in Los Angeles. So, although statistically Wilt had dominated Bill Russell during their that was the first real great player-to-player rivalry in NBA history, Russell had the last laugh because invariably almost every time, except for 67, he beat Wilt. That's going back to when Wilt even played for the San Francisco Warriors in the early 60s.
Right, because I was going to say that the 67 finals was a matchup between Wilt and his former team because he was with the Philadelphia Warriors, and then they moved to San Francisco, and he was with them for a couple of years in San Francisco, and then he went back to Philadelphia to play for the Sixers. Now, how did Wilt, first of all, end up going from the Golden State Warriors with Wilt in Philadelphia? They moved to San Francisco. Wilt moves with them. How did he end up going back to Philly to the Sixers?
They made a trade. It was a multi-player trade. I believe that the Sixers gave up like 3 or so players to get Wilt. I suspect also there was some dissatisfaction with Wilt playing out in the West Coast because he was more of an East Coast guy. Although he does end up his career in Los Angeles, but I think also there might have been a little dissatisfaction as far as playing for San Francisco. And then, when he left, the Warriors had another great center named Nate Thurman. Wasn't necessarily a scorer like Wilt was, but he was a real defensive presence. So it wasn't much of a drop-off when Wilt went back to the Sixers because Nate Thurman came in. And the only team to really challenge that 67 76er championship team was the Warriors in the finals. They actually did win 2 games with Nate Thurman at center, and then the great Rick Barry was their other star player.
Yes, now, okay, so you mentioned Wilt in 67, right, beating Russell, the only time he beat him in the playoffs. But then, okay, you mentioned 68, he's up 3-1 and can't get it done. And then I know the next year you mentioned that Wilt gets traded to the Lakers and he faces the Celtics and go to 7 games. And now I've heard people get very critical of Wilt because we know how talented he is, and he scored 100 points in the game, the most points anybody's ever scored in the NBA game. And you look at his numbers, and he's done all this absurd things numbers-wise with the amount of rebounds he's gotten per game and points per game and all that. I mean, he has all-time drug numbers that nobody will ever touch individually, but he only won 2 championships. And I've heard some people who were watching this stuff, like you, and know about it when it was going on. They criticize Wilt and say, hey, there were some big games against Russell where, for as much as we want to praise him and talk about how talented and great he was, there was some playoff games against Russell where he showed up very short, didn't do much, looked kind of like disengaged or what have you. And even Game 7, 69, Wilt was on the bench for the last several minutes of that Game 7. So,
Yes.
How about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, there was that criticism is very legitimate, that they felt that maybe sometimes he didn't show up or whatever. Having said that, though, I do believe, though, if you take 5-on-5, one thing the Celtics had, they were a better team. There were some very good players that Wilt had around him, specifically the great Hal Greer, who's in the Hall of Fame, I believe, and Billy Cunningham was a very, very good player. But Russell had Casey Jones, Sam Jones, John Havlicek. So I think the difference was once you got past Wilt and Bill Russell, the Celtics had a better team and also a deeper bench with Don Nelson and Thatch Sanders and stuff like that, which the Sixers didn't have. They had Matt Gukas and players like that. But I think that was also a huge determining factor was the overall roster of the Celtics was better than the roster of the Sixers. But Wilt was so good, he was able to make them, very competitive against the Celtics.
Okay, yeah, because I know Bill Sharman was the coach of the Lakers in '69, right?
No, I believe it was Butch Van Breda.
Oh, right. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
That right. That's okay. So Butch, and so he was Will asked out of the game late in the fourth quarter, like about midway through, and the coach never put Wilt back in the game to end the finish. So that was very interesting. And from what I heard that the coach was upset that Wilt even asked to come out midway through the fourth quarter, and he would say, you know what, I'm not going to even bring him back in. But you mentioned Thatch Sanders with the Celtics. You know what? I didn't realize until a couple of days ago that he went to NYU.
Absolutely. I believe they went to the Final Four when he was there, too, I think in 1960.
Right. And, of course, Cal Ramsey was there. I used to always see him at the Garden when he was alive. Yeah, so very interesting stuff you did there. Okay, so, and then, the Knicks and the Lakers, it's very interesting. The Knicks now, this will be their sixth NBA Finals appearance, and the Knicks, their first three championship NBA Finals appearances in the 70s was against the Lakers every time. And now, since then, the three matchups, all Texas teams. But just the Knicks-Lakers rivalry in the 70s, facing each other in the 70 Finals, 72 Finals, 73 Finals, Hall of Famers all over the place. What do you remember just about that rivalry over that 4-year period between those two heavyweights?
It was incredible. I mean, they were clearly the class of the NBA, those two teams. Russell retired in '69, and the Celtics were on a downward spiral until '74. They had players like Dave Cowens coming, so they were out of the picture. Philadelphia, after Wilt was gone after the 6-8 season, I mean, they fell apart. 72, 73 was the worst team of all time at 73, 76er team. So the Knicks were clearly the class of the East, and the Lakers were clearly the class of the West. So it was anyone's championship in 70. Obviously, went to Game 7, and obviously everyone knows about Willis and what happened in Game 7. But they were very, very evenly matched teams. 71, the Knicks got upset by the Bullets. They lost Game 7. Remember, Bill Bradley missed a corner jumper that could have won the game. I was very disappointed about that, and they lost to the Bullets, who then ended up losing to the Bucks in the finals. And I think if the Knicks could have made the finals that year, I think they could have beaten the Bucks because they handily dispatched them in 70 in 5 games in the playoffs. But that wasn't to be, and the Bucks swept the Bullets in 71. So the Knicks come back in 72. And 72, they were very fortunate to make the finals because Willis was hurt. He did not play in the finals. Jerry Lucas was the center. And I remember the first game, and the Knicks blew him out. And I was like, this is incredible. Boy, they've beaten the Lakers in Game 1 in Los Angeles, convincing fashion with Jerry Lucas, who's hitting all these bombs on top of the key and everything. There was no three-point shot that time. He was deadly from outside. And it looked like the Knicks were going to maybe go en route to their second championship in 72. But obviously missing Willis was the big key, and then the Lakers then won 4 straight. Fast forward to 73, The Knicks come back again into the postseason, but this time they're underdogs because now the Celtics have gotten good again. And they had a great record that year in '73, and I believe it went to a deciding game between the Knicks and the Celtics. And I believe the Knicks beat them at the Boston Garden in a deciding game. Shocked everyone because people thought Boston was going to take that series, have a deciding game at home. And the Knicks were destined. Willis was back. Willis was healthy. And in that series, they won convincingly in 5 games. Phil Jackson, who was on the roster in the '70s, but was hurt all season with a back injury, is now on the roster in '73. He contributed off the bench. Earl Monroe is now on the team. He wasn't on the '70 championship team, but now he's on the '73 championship team. And him and Clyde worked beautifully in the backcourt. There were a few other new players and stuff. And the Knicks won handily. And I remember the Knicks won Game 5 at the Forum, and it was really strange. There was people swarming all over the court. You would have thought the game was at the Garden. There were so many Knicks fans in the Forum that night celebrating the championship. And that cemented that Knicks era. It wasn't just one championship team. We talk about an era, and the Knicks during that era, I think it really started in the '68-'69 season. I got the Busher. 68-'69 season to '73-'74 season. They were really, along with the Lakers, the class of the NBA. It was incredible, and to this day, the greatest era in Knicks basketball.
And there were no parades for the championship team in New York City back in those days. But because I heard somebody, I've heard like 2 different versions. I've heard people say that, it was crazy in '73 when they won. But then I heard somebody call up the radio about a couple weeks ago. He said that he remembers, the Knicks winning, and like afterwards in the city, it wasn't really like, it didn't seem like it was that big. I mean, it was a big deal, but people weren't, like going insane the way you might expect, and like the media, no social media and stuff back then. So I mean, I guess maybe a little bit hard to gauge. But he said that it didn't seem like it was as much fanfare when they came back as you would have expected. But what do you remember it being like first in 1973, and then 3 years prior in '70 when they won the championship?
Well, he's right. I mean, there was certainly a lot of enthusiasm. People were ecstatic, and those Knicks teams were beloved and so forth. But the big difference was NBA basketball was not as big in 1973 as it eventually became in the '80s. NBA basketball, as we know it today, really didn't become the sport that it is until the 1980s. Before then, first of all, there's a lot less teams, and it's much more of a regional sport. It was clearly a sport behind pro football and baseball. So it was more due to the fact that basketball itself was not as big as it eventually became in the 1980s. Now, of course, I argue it right behind the NFL. I argue in many respects it's bigger than Major League Baseball, which is saying a lot. But in those days, it was not that big of a sport.
Yeah.
In the mass consciousness of sports fans.
Yes, and when you see all the stars that show up to these NBA games and whatnot, I mean, in a lot of ways, I know the ratings don't necessarily say it, but it seems like there's no bigger event than, of course, Super Bowl and all that, but like, you look at these playoff games and even regular season game, you see some of the people that show up to these games at the Garden, like, it seems like it's as big as anything sometimes when you look at it like that, But 1970... their first championship, Game 7, Willis Reed coming out before the game, Knicks winning. What do you remember the city being like at that time?
It was electric. It was great because it was their first championship. And as I said before, the team was very beloved. They had a 60-22 record, the best record in the league. So people knew there was something special about that team considering the season they had. But it was just, all those guys were so beloved. I mean, Clyde, DeBusschere, Bradley, Willis, of course, the captain, who led the team into the MVP that season. It wasn't just a good team. There was something about the players themselves that New York really embraced that made it really special. And what was great was, all those guys were there in '73 as well, too. So that really cemented the legacy.
Okay, everybody listening, I'm speaking with my friend Dave German, who is a sports historian as good as a sports historian as I know, and you all can see that as you listen to him speak. Folks, we're on for about another 7 minutes or so. So, Dave, let me ask you. So, these NBA Finals, and you folks, Dave is not a Knicks fan. He's a Nets fan. So, he's looking at this from an objective angle here. So, if I ask you, Dave, to what you think will happen during this NBA Finals here, 2026, Knicks Spurs, what do you think is going to happen?
It's going to go 5, maybe 6 with the Knicks winning. I think if the Knicks will win at least one of the two in San Antonio. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out the same way they did against Cleveland in Game 1, based on the fact they've been off for quite some time. And there's going to be a lot of intensity from the opening tip in San Antonio. Those fans are ferocious there in terms of intensity. But I could see the Knicks having a little bit of tough time just because of the long layoff. It's tough. It's tough for any athlete to, you can do all the game simulations and practice you want, but being off the length of time they're off, and then to come back to play an NBA Finals game, I think could be a little bit troublesome for the Knicks, but I see them at minimum winning one of those two in San Antonio, definitely winning both at the Garden, and then they either wrap it up in Game 5 in San Antonio, or at worst, Game 6 at the Garden, which wouldn't be that bad because it would be, I think, incredible to see the Knicks, for Knicks fans, to actually see the championship being won on the Madison Square Garden floor, which has only happened once. 73 championship was won in Los Angeles, and of course the 70 championship was won in New York. So I think it could be pretty special for the Knicks to win it if they did go 6 to win it at the Garden. I do not see it going past there. I think more than likely it would go 5.
And the Knicks, this year in these playoffs, all 3 series they won on the road, so have not had a chance to celebrate a series clincher at the Garden. And even, last season, when they clinched the semifinals against Boston, that was the first time the Knicks clinched a playoff series in their building since 1999. So the Knicks have not had a lot of series clinchers in their building. It would definitely be great if they clinched the NBA Finals in their building. That would certainly be special. So now, Dave, real quick, yesterday, Dave, folks, is a Mets fan, and yesterday at Citi Field, the Mets put into their Hall of Fame Bobby Valentine and Lee Mazzilli. So just real quick, your thoughts on those two gentlemen there.
Well, I was fortunate to be there, and I was so delighted for both of them to go. They both deserve it. Lee Mazzilli perhaps might not be statistically up with the other players who are in the Mets Hall of Fame, but he meant so much to that team. The down year of 77 to 83, he was the one spark plug they had on the team, and always performed very well in very bad Met teams. He created a name for himself in the 79 All-Star game where he had a home run. I believe he had the game-winning hit in 79 in the All-Star game, which was great. When the All-Star game really meant something and those leagues really played to win. So I think Lee was very well-deserved. And, of course, came back to the Mets and played a key bench role in 86 in the postseason, which really excited Met fans to see one of their beloved players from the 70s come back and get a World Series ring in 86. And then Bobby V, of course, he was on the Mets coaching staff when they won in 86, and the second winningest manager behind Davey Johnson in Met history, so he was certainly deserving. And what's also special is they're both local guys. Lee is from Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and Bobby Valentine's from Stamford, Connecticut. So it's always nice to see local heroes, being part of the Mets Hall of Fame.
Yes, now, that's great. I didn't even know that you were there yesterday, so that's cool.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, okay, last question for you, Dave. Now, you are a Nets fan, so you were Nets fans since they were in Jersey. That's where you're originally from, New Jersey, and they are in Brooklyn now. My question to you is, they made the move from Brooklyn a little over 10 years ago, and when they first went to Brooklyn, I felt like it was a great idea for them to name themselves Brooklyn, all right, and not New York. And I remember, actually, Stephen A. Smith, I got to give him credit because at that time he said that he thought the Nets should call themselves New York Nets instead of Brooklyn Nets. And he said, they should really challenge the Knicks and, have the name New York. And I felt like, they could challenge the Knicks and, have it Brooklyn. I thought that, having it Brooklyn, like how the Dodgers did when they were here, when Jackie Robinson and all that, I thought that was a good idea. But, now I kind of feel like they should have called themselves the New York Nets and not Brooklyn. But what do you think about that? And just what do you think about, how it's been for the Nets since they moved from New Jersey to Brooklyn? Do you think it was still a good idea? And what do you think about where they're at right now, just from that standpoint?
I totally agree with you in terms of what you said, and keeping naming themselves the New York Nets. The idea was that by calling themselves the Brooklyn Nets, the idea was to carve out a unique identity for themselves. Brooklyn is the most populated borough of the 5 boroughs, and the idea was if we carve ourselves out as the Brooklyn Nets, we kind of create an identity. And Brooklyn is a world-renowned name. If you talk to someone in Paris, you say Staten Island, they have no idea. Even Queens, they don't know what you're talking about. But when you say Brooklyn, they all know it. So the idea was, let's carve identity for that. That being said, the Nets are second-class citizens in their own borough. And there's overwhelmingly more Knicks fans in Brooklyn than Nets fans in their own borough. So that idea of creating that own identity and getting the people from Brooklyn, to become Nets fans, that didn't happen. It's not going to happen. A Knicks fan in Brooklyn remains a Brooklyn fan. By also calling yourself Brooklyn, then you kind of isolate yourself from other parts of the region who would, recognize themselves if they called themselves New York versus Brooklyn. They lost a lot of fans once they moved from New Jersey to Brooklyn. People just, kind of gave up on the team once they moved there. So I think just it was not a good, move to call themselves New York. Them leaving Jersey to Brooklyn, I think with the popularity of NBA basketball right now, that they would have, if they stayed in Jersey, I think they would do very well. And it's just because NBA basketball is so popular, and the Nets benefit from that. Not necessarily there's lots of Nets fans, but just people want to go see NBA basketball. And if they can't get a Knicks ticket, which is very hard to do and very expensive, people will go see the Brooklyn Nets, and they've benefited from that with their attendance figures. But there's no question that even in their own borough, they're way behind in terms of popularity versus Knicks fans.
So their attendance figures are better in Brooklyn than they were in Jersey?
And they are, but it all depends on the season. When the Nets had their run with Jason Kidd, they were doing extremely well at the box office. But one reason Nets figures in New Jersey were not that strong was, the team was not that good for many, many years. Let's not forget their first 25 years in New Jersey, they won one playoff series. So it was hard for people to really get behind them in the way that they eventually did. But when they had good teams with Jason Kidd, they were doing very well at the box office. And they tailed off after that because once they announced the move to Brooklyn, people then started getting disinterested in the franchise, and they kind of sold off all the players, and Kidd and Carter were traded, and kind of all fell apart there at the end. But when they had good teams, they could draw. But NBA basketball, and they left in 2012, NBA basketball is infinitely more popular now 14 years later. And I think if they stayed in Jersey, they would just benefit from the fact that NBA basketball is bigger, and people want to see that product no matter who the team is.
Because it seemed like when they were in Jersey, it seemed like they didn't really have many fans. But now that they're in Brooklyn, it seems like they don't have many fans. So do you think they had more fans overall when they were, I know you said right now they lost a lot of New Jersey fans, but do you think that they have more fans now overall when they were in Jersey, or do you think that they have more fans overall when they were still in Jersey?
Jersey, definitely. They had definitely not, wasn't huge, wasn't, 18,000, but they had a good core fan base of people who were, myself included, who were rabid New Jersey Net fans. I don't see that in Brooklyn. I see people going to the games, for instance, NBA basketball, a lot of international people traveling, going to see NBA basketball, and the product is better, and they're going to see other players. But I don't see the enthusiasm amongst Brooklyn fans like I saw with New Jersey fans going to see both of those games. Again, you know, Brooklyn is Knicks territory. Those fans are Knicks fans, and you see it somewhere when you go to a Knicks net game at the Barclays Center. It's filled with Knicks fans. It sounds like the Garden at times.
Yeah, definitely. You know, when I'm in Philadelphia for Knicks Sixers game, it sounds like the Barclays Center. You know.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah. You know what? And I just want to say, because I feel like if the Nets had named themselves New York Nets, because I think more people will be willing to wear Nets gear if they were New York, if it said New York, but like it says Brooklyn. So if you're in the Bronx or Queens, you know, why are you going to put on some Brooklyn gear, you know,
Right.
when you're not from Brooklyn? But if it was New York, I think more people in all the boroughs would be more willing to wear Nets gear. And maybe, you know, even it would still be an uphill battle for them, but I think more people would be willing to, you know, wear New York Nets gear than Brooklyn Nets gear, you know?
And there's people from Long Island who remember the New York Nets of the ABA, the type of Nassau Coliseum, call themselves the New York Nets and kind of harking back to that history that the Nets has an ABA franchise out on Long Island.
Right, no doubt about it. Okay, so, folks, I've been talking with my friend Dave German, great sports historian. Dave, gotta run. Thank you so much for calling in, and I'll talk to you soon, okay?
Maury, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for the outstanding work you do on this show. It's really terrific, so thank you again.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Dave, and I'll talk to you soon. Always great talking to you. All right, now, folks, I've got to go. I got to do my show at WBAI beginning at 1 o'clock from 1 to 2. I'm going to go to a recording booth in this studio here, this beautiful studio we have here at WACR. I'm going to do my WBAI show starting in 10 minutes, so 99.5 FM. You can catch me over there, or you can stay here and hear the great music show here with Gil Hall. She is on next. So, folks, I have to go. I'll see you all soon. Go Knicks. Go Knicks. We'll talk here next week. Adios.